Welcome to Zarila HOA Stories. Drop your city or country name in the comments and make sure to subscribe because this story will leave you speechless. It all began when I moved into what was supposed to be a peaceful suburban neighborhood in Crestwood Valley, the kind of place where people waved as they passed, dogs barked at every jogger, and freshly cut lawns lined both sides of the street. It looked perfect from the outside, but it didn't take long for me to realize this neighborhood wasn't what it seemed. My name is Ryan Cooper, a software engineer who'd finally escaped city chaos to enjoy some quiet. I bought Lot 47, a small acre on the edge of the neighborhood, fenced, private, and surrounded by a few oak trees. It was my sanctuary. I thought I'd finally found peace until I met the HOA president, Karen Mitchell. Karen was the type of person who turned every rule into a weapon. Mid-50s, perfectly ironed clothes, a pearl necklace that gleamed like authority itself. Her short blonde bob and sharp smile didn't hide the controlling gleam in her eyes. She had an army too, the HOA committee, a trio of gossip-loving neighbors who treated her word as law. From the start, Karen made her presence known. The day I moved in, she approached me with a clipboard in hand and said, "Welcome to the community, Mr. Cooper. Just so you know, your trash bins must be off the curb by 7:01 a.m. sharp, and your grass height can't exceed 3 inches. We take pride in order here." I smiled politely and nodded, thinking she was just overly organized. But I quickly realized that every smile hid surveillance. My security cameras caught her walking near my fence multiple times. Once, she even measured my mailbox color against an HOA-approved swatch. I tried to ignore her. I paid my dues on time, followed the rules, and avoided drama. But that didn't stop the subtle harassment, passive-aggressive notes about my too rustic fence, emails about how metal chairs weren't neighborhood aesthetic, and her constant stares whenever I grilled in my own yard. I had learned one thing. Karen hated anyone she couldn't control. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Friday. I woke up early to make coffee and check emails before work. In my inbox was one from the HOA, subject line, Community Barbecue Event. You're invited. I opened it casually at first, scrolling through the overly cheerful tone about building unity and neighborly love. But then I saw the line that made my stomach drop. Location, Lot 47, open field. I froze. Lot 47 was my address, my property, my fenced backyard. There was no open field. I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe they mislabeled the address or meant the park near the clubhouse. I reread it 3 times, my heart pounding. At the bottom, it read, "Approved by HOA President Karen Mitchell." Confused and irritated, I sent a reply asking for clarification. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a response. No mistake. The HOA board voted to hold the event on the open community space near your home. As per HOA jurisdiction, all residents must allow reasonable community access. I reread that sentence, feeling my jaw tighten. There was no community space near my home, just my fence property. I double-checked my deed and property map. The lines were clear as day. My land was private. Karen was lying. That evening, I walked to her house. She was watering her rose bushes, wearing her usual smug smile. "Karen," I said evenly, holding on my phone with the email, "this event, it says Lot 47. That's my property." She didn't even look surprised. "Oh, Ryan, you must be mistaken," she said sweetly. "That field looks so open and perfect for a gathering. Everyone thought it was community land. You don't mind sharing for one little afternoon, do you?" My voice hardened. "It's not community land. It's private. Mine." Karen's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "The HOA has already printed flyers, sent out invitations, and arranged catering. It's too late to change. Don't make things difficult. It's for the neighborhood." I could feel the blood rushing to my face. "You didn't even ask permission." She shrugged, turning back to her flowers. "Sometimes, Ryan, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission." That night, I couldn't sleep. My cameras caught people walking by, pointing at my fence, marking spots on the ground. Trucks passed by slowly, some even stopping to take measurements. My phone buzzed nonstop with HOA group messages filled with cheerful talk about Saturday's big barbecue. I sent another email, a formal warning that my property was private and no one was authorized to enter. I even attached my deed, but no reply came, only silence. Something told me Karen wasn't backing down, and deep down, I knew she was testing me, trying to prove she could bend anyone to her will. But she'd made one mistake. She picked the wrong person to mess with. I stared out the window of my quiet yard under the moonlight, the sprinklers glistening across the grass. The night was still, but I could feel it, the calm before the storm. I didn't know it then, but that community barbecue was about to turn into a night the entire neighborhood would never forget. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of engines rumbling outside. When I peeked through the blinds, my heart dropped. A line of pickup trucks and delivery vans stood parked along the curb. Workers in bright orange vests were unloading tables, tents, and boxes of food. Large coolers stacked with drinks sat on the sidewalk. A big white banner flapped in the breeze, half unrolled. Crestwood Valley HOA Community Barbecue, sponsored by Karen Mitchell. I threw on a jacket and stormed outside. My backyard gate stood wide open. Strangers were walking across my grass, driving metal poles into the ground, dragging cords, hammering stakes, and setting up huge canopy tents. The air smelled of gasoline and arrogance. "Hey," I shouted. "What are you doing on my property?" A young guy with a clipboard looked up and shrugged. "We were told this is the event site. HOA president said it's all approved." Before I could respond, I saw her. Karen Mitchell, wearing her signature pastel suit and a wide-brimmed sun hat, marching across my lawn like she was inspecting troops. She had that same satisfied smirk that made my blood boil. "Karen," I barked, walking straight toward her. "I told you, this is private property. You can't hold your event here." She turned slowly, her smile tight and polished. "Ryan, dear, don't get so worked up. It's just one afternoon. The whole neighborhood's excited. You'll see. It'll bring us all closer." "You didn't ask for permission," I snapped. "You just decided to take over my backyard." Karen tilted her head, mock sympathy in her eyes. "Oh, come on. You barely use this space. It's just grass and dirt. And technically, the HOA has limited authority to use community-adjacent spaces. There's nothing community about this." I interrupted. "You're trespassing." For a second, her smile vanished, replaced by a glare so cold it made my stomach twist. Then, as if remembering her audience, she chuckled lightly. "You're overreacting. If you have a problem, take it up with the board." "I'm taking it up with the board," I said sharply. "And if you don't get everyone off my property, I'll call the police." Karen crossed her arms. "Do it. They'll tell you the same thing I did. Civil dispute. Besides, by the time they show up, we'll already be grilling burgers." She turned her back on me and started barking orders at the workers. "Put the drink coolers near the oak tree. Oh, and the bounce house goes by the fence." My fists clenched. I walked back inside and dialed the local police department anyway. After 10 minutes of explaining, the officer on the line confirmed exactly what Karen predicted. "Sir, it's a civil issue. Unless there's property damage or violence, we can't intervene." I hung up, staring out my window as more cars began to arrive. Families carrying picnic baskets, kids with frisbees, people dragging lawn chairs, all walking through my gate. I tried to reason with a few of them, explaining it was private property, but they just shrugged or laughed it off. "Karen said you volunteered the space," one woman said. "You're such a great neighbor." My jaw tightened. Karen had not only stolen my yard, she'd turned me into her pawn. By noon, the smell of grilled meat filled the air. Music blasted from huge speakers. My grass was hidden under tables and blankets. People laughed, kids screamed, and Karen strutted around, shaking hands like a politician. My name kept popping up in their conversations. Ryan was so kind to host. What a generous man. I wanted to scream. Then something inside me shifted. The anger cooled, settling into something darker, quieter, a plan forming beneath the rage. I walked into my garage, shutting the door behind me. On the far wall sat a large gray control box, the irrigation system I'd built myself last summer. 8 high-pressure sprinkler heads buried across my yard, each connected to an industrial-grade pump. I designed it for efficiency, but it had one hidden advantage: power. I could activate the whole system remotely and turn the lawn into a miniature hurricane of water. I opened the panel, flipping a few switches to test the pressure levels. The pump hummed like a beast waking up. I smiled to myself. Not yet. I let them enjoy their little party for a while. Let them get comfortable. When I stepped back outside, Karen was standing near the grill, chatting with her husband, Bob, a man who looked permanently exhausted. She waved when she saw me, pretending to be friendly. "Ryan, you must come grab a burger. You're the star of the show today." I forced a smile. "Oh, I'm sure I'll make my appearance soon enough." Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read me, but she turned away, too busy entertaining to notice the storm she was standing on. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower, the laughter got louder, and the trash piled higher. People danced, drank, and trampled my flower beds without a thought. I recorded everything on my cameras. Faces, license plates, evidence. At one point, a group of kids ran straight into my garden, crushing my vegetables. Their parents just smiled and said, "Kids will be kids." That was it. I'd had enough. I walked back into my house, calm and quiet, as the music outside blared. Through the blinds, I could see Karen leading a toast, shouting something about community pride. Her voice carried across the yard like nails on glass. I placed my hand on the irrigation control switch and whispered, "Let's see how proud you are after this." The sprinklers hissed softly as the pressure built. In that moment, every ounce of frustration, every insult, every rule she'd thrown at me, it all came down to this. The only question was when to pull the trigger, because once I did, there'd be no going back. And Karen Mitchell would finally learn what happens when you invade my property. By late afternoon, my property didn't even look like my home anymore. It looked like a festival ground. Cars lined both sides of the street, blocking driveways. Strangers I'd never seen before were laughing, shouting, clinking plastic cups, and walking straight through my yard like it belonged to them. My fence was open, my garden flattened, and the oak tree I'd planted 5 years ago had 3 kids hanging from its lowest branch. The entire place reeked of grilled meat, spilled beer, and arrogance. Karen stood in the middle of it all like a queen holding court. She wore a sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and a smug grin as she waved to her adoring audience. "See, Ryan," she called out over the music when she spotted me standing by my back door. "Everyone's having such a wonderful time. This is exactly the kind of spirit Crestwood Valley needs." I didn't reply. I just stared at her, memorizing every word, every gesture. My hands were in my pockets, but my mind was busy turning gears. For hours, I'd been watching, waiting, planning. And now, the sun was starting to sink, the sky glowing orange and pink. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The sprinkler system sat armed and ready. I checked the valves, tested the pressure, and adjusted the rotation pattern so it would hit every inch of the yard. The system was strong enough to soak the entire area within seconds. But this wasn't just about water. It was about humiliation, about giving Karen and her followers a taste of the chaos they'd created for me. Before I could act, though, something unexpected happened. From across the lawn, a small group of neighbors approached me, people I barely knew. Leading them was an older man named George, who lived 2 houses down. He looked uncomfortable, rubbing his neck as he spoke. "Hey, Ryan," he began, glancing nervously at the party. "Look, I just wanted to say, I didn't realize this was your property. Karen told everyone it was common land." "She lied," I said flatly. "That's my fence line. This is all private property." George sighed. "Yeah, I figured that out once I saw your shed and garden. But honestly, everyone's scared of her. She runs this neighborhood like she owns it. Most of us just go along because it's easier." "Not anymore," I muttered. George frowned. "What are you planning to do?" I looked him in the eye. Something they'll never forget. He hesitated, then chuckled nervously. "Well, whatever it is, I'll pretend I didn't see it." And with that, he turned and walked back toward the crowd. Karen was now on a small stage they'd set up near the oak tree, holding a microphone. "Thank you, everyone, for joining our wonderful annual barbecue," she shouted. "Let's give a round of applause to our generous host, Mr. Ryan Cooper. The crowd erupted in cheers. I stood motionless, my jaw tightening as the sound of their clapping filled the air. She was mocking me, turning me into part of her show. You see, she continued, when we all come together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. That's what community means. Community. That word stung more than I expected. Because this wasn't community, it was control, invasion, and entitlement wrapped in smiles and cheap paper plates. I walked back inside my house, closed the blinds, and stood before the irrigation control panel. The hum of the pump echoed faintly beneath my feet, ready to unleash a storm. My hand hovered over the switch. I hesitated. For a split second, I wondered if I was going too far. If maybe I should just let it go, collect the video evidence, and take her to court later. But then I looked out the window again and saw a kid knock over my garden lights while his father laughed. A woman dumped her drink in my flower bed. And Karen? She raised her glass high and shouted, "To the HOA." That was it. I flipped the master switch to armed and set the timer for 5 minutes. The system would trigger automatically, unleashing 8 jets of icy water from all corners of the yard. The crowd wouldn't see it coming. As I waited, I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, listening to the muffled chaos outside. The laughter, the music, the crackle of the grill. It was the sound of their arrogance, completely unaware that everything they'd built on my land was about to come crashing down. Then I saw movement through the blinds, Karen walking toward my back door. My heart rate slowed. She knocked twice hard. I opened it just enough to meet her smirk. "Ryan, there you are. Everyone's been asking for you. Don't be shy. Come say a few words. After all, this is your backyard." My face didn't move. "Enjoy your party, Karen. It's about to get interesting." Her brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I closed the door in her face. Outside, the DJ started a new song, the bass thumping through the walls. The countdown on the irrigation panel hit 0:10. My pulse quickened. I could picture it already, the chaos, the confusion, the panic. 5 seconds. Karen was back on stage, microphone in hand, laughing as she shouted something to the crowd. 3 seconds. I pressed my hand against the window, watching. 1. The sprinklers roared to life. The first blast hit the center of the lawn, sending water shooting 20 feet into the air. Then the rest erupted like a geyser field, 8 high-pressure streams cutting through the crowd. Screams filled the air. Tables flipped, paper plates flew, and burgers splattered into the mud. The DJ's equipment sparked and died as water sprayed across his setup. People scrambled in all directions, slipping, shouting, tripping over cables and chairs. Karen screamed something unintelligible into a microphone before dropping it and running for cover. Children cried. Adults cursed. The once lively barbecue turned into a stampede of drenched, furious neighbors. Inside, I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching through the rain-soaked window. My lawn, my private land, was finally mine again. But this wasn't the end. No, not yet. The real reckoning would come later, when Karen realized she'd not only humiliated herself in front of the whole neighborhood, but also on camera. Because what she didn't know was that every single second of it had been recorded. And tomorrow, that footage was going to make sure she never pulled a stunt like this again. The night after the chaos, Crestwood Valley was eerily quiet. The laughter, the music, the arrogance, all gone. Only the smell of burnt meat and wet mud hung in the air. My backyard looked like a war zone. Tables overturned, balloons half deflated, muddy footprints stamped across every inch of grass. But despite the wreckage, there was a strange peace in the silence. The same yard that had been invaded and trampled hours ago finally belonged to me again. I barely slept. Around dawn, I stepped outside with a cup of coffee, the cold morning mist wrapping around me. My boots sank slightly into the soaked soil. Broken cups, crushed soda cans, and bits of torn decorations littered the ground. My garden was gone, my fence unhinged, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry. I felt victorious. By 9 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID read HOA office. I knew exactly who it was. Ryan Cooper. Karen's voice burst through the speaker, sharp and panicked. "What in the world did you do?" You destroyed our event. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I took a slow sip of coffee. No, Karen, you humiliated yourself. I just provided the stage. You deliberately sabotaged an HOA-sanctioned function, she snapped. The board is furious. You're going to pay for this. Funny, I said, because I've got 4 cameras worth of footage showing every second of your trespassing. You used my private land without permission. You ignored my warnings, and you let a mob into my backyard. Silence. For the first time, Karen didn't have a quick answer. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, softer, almost desperate. Look, Ryan, let's not make this ugly. I can talk to the board. We can call it a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said coldly. You'll pay for the damage, you'll apologize to the neighborhood, and you'll step down as HOA president. Or everyone sees that footage. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I hung up. By noon, the HOA email list was buzzing. Karen sent a mass message calling the whole thing a sprinkler malfunction and thanking everyone for their patience and understanding. It was laughable, but the truth started spreading faster than her lies. George, the older man who'd quietly warned me before the party, posted a statement on the community forum. Karen used Ryan's private property without consent. He warned her. She ignored him. The thread exploded. Neighbors began sharing what they'd seen, how Karen brushed off my protests, how she ordered workers around like she owned the place. Some even uploaded their own phone videos of the chaos. By evening, the story had taken on a life of its own. That night, a knock echoed on my door. When I opened it, Karen stood there, drenched from the drizzle outside. The woman who once ruled the neighborhood now looked hollow, her perfect hair frayed, her clipboard missing, her confidence gone. Ryan, she said, voice low and brittle. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe. About what? Trespassing or lying? She swallowed hard. I'll admit I made mistakes. But if you release that footage, I'll lose everything. My position, my reputation. You already lost them, I said flatly. You just don't realize it yet. Her eyes flicked toward my laptop, glowing on the desk behind me, as if she could see the files sitting there, waiting. What do you want? She whispered. Already told you, I said. You'll resign, pay for the damage, and send a public apology to every resident. Then we're done. Her lips trembled. And if I don't? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Then everyone gets to see exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong property owner. For a moment, she just stared at me, rain dripping from her hair. Then she turned and walked away, her shoes squelching in the mud she'd helped create. 3 days later, the HOA sent out another email. Effective immediately, Karen Mitchell has resigned as president of the Crestwood Valley HOA, citing personal reasons. We thank her for her years of service and wish her well. It was over, or so I thought. The following week, the neighborhood went strangely quiet. No more HOA emails. No surprise inspections. No Karen pacing the streets with her clipboard. For once, people seemed relaxed. A few even stopped by to help me clean the yard. George brought me a new garden light and a cold six-pack. To the man who finally tamed the beast, he said with a grin. I laughed, but something in his tone made me pause. There was pity in his eyes. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the sprinklers hum softly across the lawn. The moonlight shimmered on the wet grass. Everything was calm again, almost too calm. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the quiet settle around me like a blanket. Then, from the shadows near my fence, I heard it, a soft metallic click. I stood up slowly. The sprinklers were off, but the sound came again, this time closer. A faint scraping, like metal against wood. My security light flickered on, illuminating the fence line. Nothing moved. The gate stood open, swaying slightly in the breeze. I turned toward the house to check the cameras, but before I took a step, something crunched under my boot. I looked down. A pearl. One of the same white pearls Karen always wore around her neck. The sprinklers hissed once, for just a second, like something had triggered the pressure again. And in that quiet, dripping night, I realized maybe this story wasn't over after all.